Well, welcome back. Thank you everyone for staying for the second roundtable, in this case directly pointing to education needs for BIM implementation in the infrastructures field. Let me briefly introduce myself, although I've done it personally with some of you. My name is Montse Delgado, and I also belong to the team of the Zigurat Global Institute of Technology, which is an online education institution with global vocation. It is my pleasure to introduce again my colleague, Rafael Riera, someone that you met already a while ago, and that is leading our BIM programs portfolio at our technical school. Also introducing again Dejan Papic, who is Advancement Academies Manager here at Bentley Systems. Thank you for holding us too, for hosting us, sorry. And finally, last but not least, Mr. Issam El-Absi, who is the director of CCC's BIM Center and BIM Academy, but also he's the director of Zigurat's Global BIM Management for Infrastructure Certification Program. Welcome, everyone, again. And let's start by discussing about the role of BIM Manager these days and its evolution. Before we go ahead with this topic, let me deliver a couple of practicalities. Let's try to raise questions at the end of each panel or each topic, which will be probably more dynamic and easier. And then we will be sharing a micro. So if those sitting, could come. Those sitting in the last rows could come closer. Probably this will ease the dynamic of the session. Okay, I would appreciate if you could move if you feel comfortable. So let's go ahead. Let's go with the role of the BIM manager. We have some BIM managers in the room, so everyone will have something to say. But we have people from the academy, good profiles to share about it. I think it would be interesting in this case to start by hearing each of you on how this profile has been evolving in the recent years, especially during the last year. I don't know. Let's just start in this case with Dejan, please.
Thank you. It's a good question. What is a BIM manager? I mean, there are so many different jobs so-called BIM managers do in the industry. You know, everything from project manager's job, design manager's job, and others. The reality is everyone on the project needs to do BIM. So in my opinion, BIM manager should be someone who's looking after the compliance, making sure everyone is following the requirements, everyone's following the standards, the processes. In the beginning, sure, setting them up. And I think a lot of the industry is actually doing that.
Okay, I think if come to the question how this profession has evolved the last year, I'll give you a figure. In 2016, as CCC, we were approached by tenders that, let's say, the amount of contracts requesting BIM manager have increased 5 times in 2017. So I think this is a good indication that people started to realize the importance of this role and the criticality of this role as a BIM manager, regardless of the definition of it, which we'll come to it later. But there is an increased demand in this post, I think, worldwide. What we have seen is in tenders coming from different parts of the world, from Asia, from the Middle East, and in Africa. And really, there is a serious increase in demand on that post.
I think that an interesting responsibility of a BIM manager is the implementation of BIM in every project or even in the company. And I think that it will be a huge market for these coming years, the implementation. And I think that, well, it's something that you can learn in these programs in Zigurat. And well, maybe we will say like it's like a CTO, the Chief Technology Officer in a design firm or in a constructor company, and well, we will have to see if in the near future the technology and what is the construction itself will go closer or more separate, because at the end we'll need more specialized people in the field of technology than just the construction, and we'll have to see if we will have separate profiles or everyone will be like a BIM profile, no?
I think, thank you, Rafael, for that. I think if we come to the role of a BIM manager, I think from CCC perspective, which we have been doing this for the last 20 years, this spans from design, because we have done design projects during construction. We have done construction projects, and extends up to both construction and, let's say, talk about facility management, operational maintenance, and so on. So the role of a BIM manager really expands through this whole life cycle of a project. And in each, for designers, it can have a definition. For construction, it might have another definition. For operational maintenance, it should have a different definition or roles. Now, seconding both gentlemen' input, what they said is true, and I believe that the role of a BIM as a BIM manager in few years will disappear, and it will be embedded in each and every profession. So all of the people working on a project will have the title of BIM. So somehow, even if he's not called the BIM planner or a BIM cost controller or a BIM operational maintenance manager, it will be embedded in his boss. So each and every stakeholder in the construction process must be fluent and understands his part of BIM. So I think that the role will expand drastically, and it will be part of each and every one profession, I believe.
And definitely. An interesting example from Crossrail. So Crossrail was very encouraging to everyone working on it to educate themselves as much as possible. So the creation of the Crossrail Bentley Information Academy was to that end, and they encourage even profiles such as receptionists to come to the academy. They did quite often, get educated about BIM, about the digital idea, at least at the higher level. And I think it's so important that all the profiles understand it,
Someone wishing to add something? Okay, Dan, please.
Hi, thank you. Yes, Dan Roster, BRE. I just wanted to reiterate, I think it's really good what you're saying about embedding it into other roles. I think the problem was when you first started discussing it, you used words like profession and role. And what we need to really think about is that it's not a role as such, it's a function. People on projects do information management. And that if you work on a very large project, that might be the only thing you do on that project. But because not everyone does super large projects all the time, there needs to be flexibility. And I think whoever does information management needs to have core construction skills, whether they be project management, architectural design, subcontract, whatever. But you have to have that background construction knowledge and upskill people to do it. When we talk about information manager as a role or as a profession, we're delegating when we actually need to be upskilling what we do. So I think it's really positive to say that, and the intention from the UK standards point of view was always to do that. And I think the market's gone off to create this kind of standalone role, and I think we need to start pulling it back to make sure that everyone does it and not just that one person who has read a couple of standards and is pretty whizzy on the software.
I think I agree with you. I think the roles themselves are going to change, and a lot of them are going to disappear. They're merging into roles that they should have been. Certainly from an architecture side, things like, I've been saying this for a while, that things like BIM coordinators should really be the project architect. It shouldn't be a separate role. I think there's also an issue with the naming. So nomenclature, people think BIM is separate from everything else, and it shouldn't be. We should kind of erase that from the way we kind of use the word. So, yeah, the roles will definitely change over the future, but it's also dependent on the size of the practice, size of the company, and what you're doing, the kind of industry you're in. So, yeah.
Thank you. I just want to ask you one thing. Like if we Google the role of a BIM manager, the most common in all the roles on Google we find is companies are asking for 5-year experience in Revit from a BIM manager. Revit is a common wordly used, so that's why I'm using. If you can Google it, you will find like 5-year experience in Revit. Do you think BIM manager should be excel in any software? Like he needs to be excel in software because on Google they are mostly asking for Revit. Let's say Revit or any Bentley software. I'm not bothered. I'm just asking you in a general sense. Does a BIM manager needs to be excel in a software?
Anybody would like to answer?
I guess it depends on the context. In some instances, software is definitely necessary, but more or less, information management is the skill that a so-called BIM manager should have. Software, it's not essential.
In our definition for the role of a BIM manager in CCC, based on our experience and the input of all the BIM managers that we send to site, is almost 20 points. The last of them is knowing a solution on BIM. So it's okay if you know Revit, it's okay if you know EcoSim. There are more important roles and responsibilities for a BIM manager that comes before the knowledge of the authoring solution. So I think it's important that whoever is working in BIM knows an authoring solution, whether it's Revit, whether EcoSim, or Rhino. It adds to his knowledge and capabilities, definitely. But it's not like... so what you see on the internet is misleading. And this is one of the problems that the industry is lacking behind, because they think that software is driving this and should be the process who drives this. We know our construction process better, and as such, we need to drive the process, not the software vendors, or neither Revit, neither EcoSim.
Because like Revit, to use Revit is a job of a technician. It's not a job of a manager. Use Revit or any software, that's the job of a technician.
Well, this is debatable. We can discuss it, but I disagree with that. I don't think it's the role of a technician, because all the BIM engineers and all the BIM staff and my team are engineers, and there is a reason behind that, and that's why we are excelling so well in BIM. But we can discuss this separately.
I think Nicholas wishes to add something.
I can shout if you like. Good try. Okay. Managers are there to manage people. A football manager manages the team, not the ball. Okay? So I think we must be very careful about assigning the role manager and using that term unless their job is to manage people.
Hi, I just want to say one more thing. I bet you in this room here now, the dominant, sort of discipline are like engineers, architects. What you need to be doing is getting more project managers in there, procurement, legal, planning. I'll give you an example. Planning, I showed planning, 4D planning. They called me a witch to be burned at the stake. These guys need to learn as well. So the other disciplines need to be brought on the bus, digital BIM bus as well.
Well, thanks so much for all these contributions. Raphael, just before we move on.
Yeah, maybe one of the problems is the lack of standardization in the profiles. So when a private company or whoever asks for a BIM manager, maybe they don't know which kind of profile they are asking for, no? And maybe they just know about Revit and they ask for a Revit large experience. So I will say that if we don't specify which skills a BIM manager need in different phases or in different kind of companies in different situations, it will be difficult for private owners or directors of companies to ask for BIM managers. And well, I think it's something interesting to discuss, because for example, we are training BIM managers, but you see a lot of kind of courses in BIM management. So, or it's exactly a BIM manager, no?
Well, so now we move on to the next topic, which is my organization doing enough BIM? This question was raised from Sweden. That was one of the questions that we collected before during the pre-event preparations. And apparently it was written by an owner of a small contractor company. Isam, when is enough? How can we know if our organization is doing enough BIM?
Well, this is a tough question, and answering it in a few minutes might be difficult. I'll try to be direct to the point. I believe that BIM is just a tool, and what we are targeting is the outcome from BIM. You know, I know that BIM is. I love BIM myself, but this is not my target. So I believe you can realize that you are doing good BIM when you start getting benefit out of BIM. So I can't say enough, but you are good. You are making good utilization of this technology. Once you feel you are cutting costs, making a safer construction, finishing on time, increasing the quality of your product. If none of these are met, or if you introduce BIM and you lose money, then okay, even if you make success story and you publish it maybe in an event like that and say I did a great achievement by doing a shop drawings extraction, for example, this is fine, and it's good, but this doesn't make you successful in BIM. And you say stop, I can stop at this point. So I believe you can say I am doing good when you feel that you are gaining really benefits out of this technology. And this is what we are targeting as technology. We need to achieve good ROIs. We need to maintain sustainable construction. We need to make sure that we have safer construction.
You can't do enough BIM. You either do it or you don't do it. You can do it poorly or you can do it well. If you do it well, then you're going to win jobs and you'll deliver the outcomes your client is looking for. That's what I think.
Maybe there's a confusion when public administrations, for example, ask for projects in BIM. Maybe they don't ask for results, or so basically the BIM is the target, but they don't ask you for better results, or and maybe this is what they ask when what is enough BIM, just modeling, or maybe I make BIM but I'm absolutely non-efficient. So
Thanks, Pasi, because I saw you knocking all the time. So.
Yeah, I almost applaud this, because I really like what you said about that. That what we see, that people think that when we talk, when we practice BIM, we have solved something, and it is really their target. And I really like it, and I agree what you said about that. It's a tool, like a mobile phone. It's a tool. I'm sending a Twitter, that's your message.
So, okay. So let's move on to the next question. Dayan, are architectural firms in a more advanced phase than construction companies and engineering firms specialized in infrastructure in this sense?
Some of them definitely in what they do, because they do a different job. So they don't do the same thing, Architects are there, at the beginning, to design it. And constructors do different things. Certainly BIM has evolved through years. It was more popular or widespread in the architecture community. So it's been there for a longer time. But I think we've gone quite a long way from building information model to building information management, which I think is the prevalent idea now.
Well, so let's keep going, let's move on now about to discuss about the key profiles to train. Okay, in this case, I have a common question again to place to each of you, because it's also something connected to a question that we received from Qatar, I have to say. What are the key profiles in an organization to be trained to lead the future in the infrastructure field? So concretely in the infrastructure field.
I guess for the time being, when you start the process, you think of how can I create a BIM, a good, healthy BIM design. And this means that the people who are authoring, who are building and putting information using my authoring tool should be first trained. This might be architects, engineers, technicians, if necessary, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and so on. So all those who are contributing to the design phase and inputting information, they need to be trained first. And then you go to the second stage when you transfer this model from, if it's going to be transferred in a good, healthy world, we're going to give this data to the construction. So this means that the contractor should be capable of reading this information, managing it, enhance it, and go for construction. Which means that the people who are doing planning, maybe estimation, time management or schedule management. Yeah, schedule management, sorry. And cost control, quality control, and maybe something like payment certificates should be trained how to utilize BIM to extract this information. Now, towards the end of the project, you need to train people who are involved in the handing over process, such as those who are giving data to the client, documentation, data sheets, asset information, geographic information systems. So during the life cycle of the project, there are certain people that need to be well prepared before starting this phase. So I believe there is many stakeholders that should be trained during the life cycle of a facility, from design during construction until handing over.
Exactly, and as I said before, I mean, on Crossrail, everyone was encouraged to come through the academy because everyone needs to understand it, everyone needs to be involved. I gave you the example of receptionist. You know, you might not think that's a role that should be BIM savvy. Maybe not BIM savvy, but, you know, they should be aware. There are lots of security challenges when it comes to BIM. We're creating digital information. Everyone needs to be aware of what the secure practices are. One role that I think is still missing, and I mentioned it in the previous roundtable, is data scientists, whatever you want to call them. We don't monetize the information that we create enough. We just create it for contractual purposes, and we don't look beyond that. You know, we create it once, we use it a few times, but we don't use it in different contexts. You know, and that I think is the role that's going to have a huge impact on what we do.
I just want to second his point about data scientists, and I think we realized this in CCC, and we have a whole department within BIM that manages information and data. And even within our organization, we have created a whole department that talks about data analysis and data automation. And this department is interacting a lot with BIM, getting a lot of information from us. And as I said, part of this team is within our organization. So I second what he has said, and I believe this is an important role, how to use this information, how to leverage this experience that you have captured during the construction life cycle before and after, and make analysis of the information you are capturing.
So, okay, that's great, because I was going to I was going to point you actually, so. That's it. Thank you.
Just because I have met the CCC in Middle East. I was 2 years ago trying to establish our business in there and talk to some of your guys. And but the question is, when we go to site and we have these good designs, how you manage the data flow from designing software to excavator or machines at the site and then get as built back? Do you have a process for that already?
Thank you. Definitely, it's not an easy process. And the most difficult part of our business is how to make the people working at the construction site to realize the digital world, respect that somebody is telling them what they have to do, and then capture their input from the construction and put it back in the office where they share the same. So what we need to have is an information model that is up to date. So this requires the direct input from construction team in our operation. So this is really a challenging process. And we've been trying this for the last 5 years. Only recently, the last 3 projects, we managed to get good results from the construction team. So just let me brief you what we are doing now. So we are creating tasks from our complete platform, which we call it BIM. It's not only the model, it's many systems integrated together. So we create for each foreman a task that he has to do. And this task is sent to site on a hard copy that is somehow smart, so we can be scanned at the end of the day to tell us what he has achieved of construction. This applies to 2 things: information captured from the construction team, which comes on this task list, and surveying information would give us the exact location of each and every component. As I'm telling you, we just started doing this. We managed to do this only in 3 projects out of hundreds, and it was really challenging. And I will tell you within the next 24 months is how are the results coming from construction sites.
Besides data management again, someone else has an intuition or a feeling that is wishing to share about education and key roles in the future? One? Okay, thank you.
Ali, I was going to say that I think there's a load of questions in the industry being asked about data scientists, data analytics and so forth. I think it's very important because we're now gathering data not just from our assets, but from assets from other industries like electric, utilities, that sort of thing, and other things like buses, so that we can operate and manage our system and also inform us for future designs. You all got an oyster ticket here. We know exactly where you've been. We can see the passenger flows. We can tweak the system to accommodate. And that info helps us to design future systems.
An answer, Sami?
Not really, but I think it's also important to not forget that the clients need to be educated as well. It's not just the teams that need to be educated, or the working teams, but the client, because certainly in my experience, I get a lot of clients talking about BIM this, BIM that, but they don't really see beyond the, those 3 letters. And you have to explain to them very early on in the project. This is super important. It has to be early in the project. What you can get out of it, what the consequences of using it are, and what the benefits of using it are. So yeah, there's educating the clients as well. It's super important, I think.
I just grab it. So I second with what Sami said, and in Finland we have founded few companies together. We are training our customers. We don't sell anything in that platform. But yes, of course, it's visible who are we. But to educate them without thinking of business, because we know when they are educated, when the knowledge increases, they will also need us and our services. Very important point.
Thanks, Ahmed. So platforms to educate customers. Actually, that's what we do too. But so in going back to our list of questions, Rafael, which levels of BIM training programs are we offering at Zigurat Global Institute of Technology?
Well, I think that something interesting in the BIM Academy is that we see a lot of Master of Science in BIM, which actually you are studying like a field, okay? And we try to train profiles, professional profiles, okay? We work to train people to be productive since the first day in their companies. Okay, so this is why, for example, we have developed this this certification program together with CCC. Okay, focused in infrastructure projects. Okay, we see that there are other masters of science that they see some buildings, some infrastructures, but we really believe in train specific professional profiles. Okay, and in this case, we will be training BIM managers for this kind of projects. And well, when we are talking about levels, in this case we have 2 levels. The first part of the master, which is the BIM modeling phase, okay, where you can choose different specializations, and then the construction management and the BIM management. Okay, so well, I will say that we try to train specific professional profiles for specific skills. Okay, we don't try to teach how to work in the field or in a field. It's just how to work in a specific professional profile or role in a company.
So going back to the table, now in this case my question is for Diane. According to Bentley's practice in consulting, what are the basic requirements that you recommend in order to have a fruitful BIM implementation in a project?
I guess there are many different things. I don't know, executive sponsorship, outcome understanding, definition of pilot projects. Maybe the one that I'd like to especially mention, we encourage all our account managers who are engaging with various accounts to bring those people first to the academy. So we talk to them about BIM, we make them understand what we mean by BIM, we see what they mean by BIM, and then in that way we can form a positive partnership that's actually fruitful to all of us, you know.
Thank you. In this case, we are opening, unless that someone wishes to add something, but in this case it was a best practice sharing. So let's open the next panel that is titled How to Become a True BIM Manager with this certification. This certification is the Global BIM Management for Infrastructure Programs certification program. Isam, this question is for you as a director of the program. How it will make an impact in the sector?
Another tough question. Thank you. I believe that what is behind this program is 20 years of experience. We have been doing BIM since 1997. So you can realize that we have developed a lot of skills, a lot of tools, a lot of workflows, processes, that can or that lived the experience of construction site. So what we have done is we tried many times, many projects, until we realized the best way to do things using this tool. We have explored many solutions, we have explored many things, and we managed to find a lot of solutions and workarounds for running problems on construction, whether it is design coordination, whether it is planning, whether it is project controls, which one of the most important things that we offer is how we use BIM to manage and control the project 3 aspects: quality, time, and cost. So I believe this vast experience and hands-on practice, which we delivered a lot of projects using this methodology. So if you look in the current industry, the age of this technology is maybe few years. Can we say 7 years, for example? The age of our experience is 20 years. So it's almost 3 times what any project could have lived using this technology. So what you are getting is really hands-on experience and hands-on practice. This is something very important. Second thing is that we look in BIM as a way to control the whole construction process. And this is not really a common practice now. If you look in the BIM workflows, they focus on the design coordination part and how to use BIM to manage clashes and avoid constructability issues on site. But this is only a small sector of what we are providing currently to our projects and our clients. We're using BIM to make sure that not only the construction operations are running smoothly, but also within budget and within and it is within the time specified. And also we are looking for the client relation, how we can take the information managed and collected and captured during construction, structure it, capture it, create assets for the client that are ready to be translated and transferred and sit in his asset registry or has asset database or asset solutions. And the same applies for operational maintenance, whether it is facility management integration, as well as geographic information system integration. So we bring to the students all this amount of experience and background in this course.
Still, may I still ask, in one sentence, what makes it unique?
The 20 years of experience that we had and the full life cycle implementation.
Okay. In my case, anytime that I hear the academic programs or our schools directors speak about the education that we are offering at Zigurat Global Institute, I always recall we are disrupting education from industry, and at the same time, we disrupt industry with education, because I believe that is something that is uniting us in this room this evening. At the golden hour, I have to say, at a beautiful time in London with beautiful views. Let's go ahead. Rafael, how do you ensure quality in the learning path in online learning? That's a very common question that we receive very often from candidates planning to enroll our programs. Can you address that?
Well, Zigurat was the first institution in Spain to offer education online in the building industry. Okay, so we were very innovative in this kind of education, and now there are a lot of universities that are offering this kind of education, online education, but it's important to adapt all the education to this methodology. I mean, if you record some classes that are on site and you offer them to your students that are abroad, actually this education is not prepared for the online education. It's just an on-site classroom that is being recorded and give it in streaming or online. No? So and moreover, we have very different kind of online educations. Okay, for example, in Zigurat we have three kind of ways to learn in a digital environment. Okay, so I will say that this kind of education is like the digital transformation of the education, and it's really important to know which will be your environment, which will be the main characteristics of this education. And well, in this way, we work with a leading platform called Canvas. And I think that to learn BIM in a digital environment, it's like the natural way, because we make the students work with BIM servers collaboratively through digital platforms. And well, I think that it's a natural way to learn BIM specifically, and well, we are very focused in this methodology. So I will say that well, and something that it's really interesting is that sometimes people think that when you're studying an online master, you will be alone during all the year, isolated in your home, looking and reading PDFs and watching videos. And in this case, I think that these masters are more social than masters that are on site, because you know a lot of people from different countries. You are always speaking with them. You are collaborating with them every day. So I would say that they are more sociable than on site. For example, sometimes when we see three guys in a table in a bar and they are speaking, they are messaging through WhatsApp, you say, oh, they're very isolated, but maybe they're speaking with 20 people each one, no? So it's like, it's more sociable, and well, it's something interesting.
More sociable, more vivid. Actually, that's also what I expect right now. What do you expect of online education? Thinking of BIM, okay? Okay, we have a candidate to respond that.
The thing I might find a bit more difficult, sometimes you are seeing on your screen some issue, then we've kind of solved it using the sky and sharing the screens, but sometimes it's not enough. It's kind of difficult because then when you are working in the industry, then you just go around the corner to the other office, and then you have the option to share. You have both, but when it's an online course, you only have the option to use internet or sharing by servers.
Okay, so Dejan, in your understanding, is online learning the best way to respond to the growing and global demand for BIM professionals? Because, you know, the classic universities have limited seats.
I guess there are pros and cons in both approaches. Depending on the topic that you're trying to learn. Let's say if you're doing software training, probably online is quite easy. You know, you can follow the instructor with your piece of software. Bentley's got online e-learning server for that. But what we've discovered through the academies, let's say through the BIM sessions, BIM introductory sessions especially, even people who sit in the academy, you know, you try to, you present to them for, I don't know, 2 hours, you know, very few responses. You try to engage with them, very few responses. At the end of the day, you ask them, so is our understanding better? Again, very few responses. So that engagement is, even in live sessions, it's quite lacking. In online sessions, I think that's even more so, you know. So, yeah, I mean, to address the global, address the issue on the global scale, definitely, yeah, online is the way to go because you can reach everyone. But to really get to the point, intimate sessions of a few people, person to person, there's no beating that.
Okay. Pasi?
Sorry to interrupt you again, but I agree what you said about the pros and cons. But what is, I think, the most important when you have online studies that you do, it requires self-discipline, because there are no other to kick your, you know, than yourself. But the good thing is also that if you don't get something in the first time, maybe you can listen the second time or third time, and you can just focus and have it on your speed. And I think that's today's way of studying. I have done some courses online, and it is difficult when you start it because it's a different way. But when you get to know it's actually pretty cool. You can do it at home.
It is, of course, flexible, one. And two, adult. You are there because you chose it. It was your choice. So, and it was your money. Sometimes it's open education. Well, I will only raise one more topic, and then the floor will be yours. We are expecting a lot of questions. Last topic is 21st century distributing and sharing top knowledge, because actually BIM in infrastructure is these days top knowledge. Not many are experts yet. We are getting close to the end, so this is the last common question. How is your organization or your institution contributing to the BIM implementation at a global scope? And how are you decentralizing this top knowledge I'm putting now on the table?
Okay. Very interesting question. Let me start by saying in CCC we have established a BIM Academy 7-8 years ago. And this is a classroom education. And during these 7 years, I was always receiving requests from CCC employees who knew about the academy, but they are either on sites, they are in remote areas, and really they cannot come to the academy to receive the classroom education. So actually this was one of the motivations to go in a partnership with a reputable organization like Zigurat, where we can distribute our academy education and our experience the last 20 years doing BIM and to distribute it to the market. The second thing was that I have seen a lot of education running in the industry, and unfortunately this education really lacks depth. It's mainly software education. And as such, our industry is lacking behind the technology because of the education being offered mainly as solutions, as software solutions. BIM is far more beyond that, and it's only a portion of it. It's important to use good tools. We must use good tools for that, but focusing or limiting the BIM process and the software part is really killing the development of BIM and advocating it further in the construction industry. So I believe that things like our academy, Zigurat Institution, Bentley Academy, are playing an important role in taking education further as industry, to the industry itself, by industry leaders to the industry professionals. So the way we thought it's a good way to distribute our knowledge is through online education, and we opted to have partners such as I said, Zigurat and Bentley, to distribute our really rich BIM education further.
Thanks. Just to make sure we all understand, because we're all talking about academies, so BIM Academy by CCC and Zigurat is different to Bentley's Digital Advancement Academy. Actually, about half of you are sitting in it today. So that's Bentley's way of decentralizing top knowledge. We started with Crossrail, and we are expanding that into a program of academies around the world, always connected to major projects, owner-operators, contractors. This one was dedicated to Crossrail. Now others are joining it. You can see the banners on the technology pods. We are trying to connect all these academies through top-of-the-line audiovisual systems. You can see the cameras and double screens. The point is we want to create that personal live environment, in-person environment online. You know, we've got an academy here in London. We've got one in Pune in India, one in Houston in America. We're just finishing one in Dubai. Beijing is coming online. There are others. We want to connect all these academies. We want to share the knowledge gained on all those projects connected to those academies between all the academies. So, for example, you've got Maha Metro project happening in India. You want to bring those experts into the academy in Pune. You want to bring experts into the academy in London from the ecosystem here, and you want them to talk to each other. You want them to share best practice. You want them to share knowledge. And I think it's a very exciting program that we are undertaking or have been undertaking for some time now, but looking to do it even more ferociously in the near future and in the coming years.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think that here there's an interesting word which is decentralizing top knowledge, okay, and which is related to the globalization. And digital education allows this decentralization of knowledge. 15 or 20 years ago, if you would like to have this kind of knowledge, you had to be in London or in Paris or in the main cities. And if you were in Pune or in any other part of the world, you basically are not able to have this knowledge. Or you come to live here for a while, or it's just difficult, no? And I think that we are in the digital revolution, okay, and in the globalization, and I think that this is why it's interesting to be in this digital environment. Okay, and this kind of partnership with CCC allows us to offer this kind of training and this knowledge to all over the world. I think that there are not too many programs like this one. I really didn't see anyone. Dejan, how do you really see a lack of knowledge in this kind of projects like in BIM management around the world?
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, if I can say awareness. I mean, we went into various projects saying they're doing BIM level 3, I mean, that might not have an effect on the actual project delivery, but it shows a clear lack of understanding of what they're doing. But, those kind of statements usually lead to discovering very poor practices, you take a look at their common data environments and, they're just not the single source of truth that we're trying to build. So yeah, definitely. Building information marketing is a powerful thing, everyone is saying how great they are, but there are few really exceptional projects. Many are lagging behind.
And well, in the other roundtable, we finished discussing about the future of BIM. And maybe we can open a little discussion about the future of education. I think that the future in the education in the near future will go through blended versions in universities and wherever. I think that it's quite stupid to have a professor that it's always explaining the same year by year. And the key point is the decentralization of the knowledge, and if we can have a lecturer from Harvard that can give you lessons in some of the universities around the world, and then you can have repetitive lessons or just the basic ones online, I think that blended versions in universities and wherever will be the future for sure. What do you think?
I totally agree with you that definitely a classroom education is appealing to a lot of us. But of course, as you said, it's not easy. You cannot have it all the time. And of course, it's, some people cannot even have it at all. So so I think blended versions will be the most appealing. And I think online education will take, let's say, will serve 85% of the purpose. And maybe 15% will be left to cases like what you have explained. You need someone to interact with, gives you a direct answer to your questions, or maybe make some work group projects, shared projects that can make you understand the process better, enhance your confidence in what you know. And this, I think, will be very nice to have this blended version of education, online and physical.
And especially when you're partnering with someone as experienced in construction as CCC, definitely.
Well, just 1 minute. Actually, blended education apparently brings the best of presential education and the flexibility of online learning. So that's quite good. And now Pasi has the word.
It was really good to hear what you said about this education, and I think there is room for classroom education, and basics needs to be learned in some way. Engineering, for instance, there's a common foundation for that. But then when we come to today's development of, for instance, BIM, it's so rapid that professor from university, no matter how high rank university it is, they don't know what is the status of today at the site. And that is so important to get that knowledge. But then the challenge is also that when we work, I work in Finland, you work in globally, I know. But it's from our point that study what we do there. And it is right, but there can be also others who see it a little differently. How to give like knowledge to these people that is not from Bentley factor or from CCC factor, but it's more like universal factor. That's a challenge. But of course, if the label is that this is Bentley training, then it's Bentley training. And if it's somebody else's training, it's there. But then it can be difficult to go from Bentley to some other organization with that paper. I see that as one challenge for this education.
Yeah, I agree. One thing about what we do is it's, let's say, Bentley agnostic. We try not to mention technology at all. That's one of the points that we make in the academy. We are trying to deliver industry best practice, let's say. We've got people who are running these academies who are embedded in the industry. If you cut them in half, it's not going to say Bentley, it's going to say the industry, basically. And that's our goal, you know, because if we show the people who come to the academy that we are independent, that we are not trying to push software on them, they can then open their minds, you know. Otherwise, it's just, yeah, another sales pitch. How does that work? It doesn't, you know.
I totally agree with you that this is a challenge for many industry stakeholders. But let me give you maybe an overview of this program, because it will maybe answer some of your questions. As Rafael explained, the education is divided into two halves. One half has to do with the authoring, creating the information, and the other part has to do with managing the information. The other part, which is the most important part, doesn't have to do with any solution. So if you have information authored in any platform, you can still manage it and use it properly until you finish this process and effectively and from real practice. So I can name a few examples if it will make you understand my perspective. If you have you know, what's the point of having a model? Having a model is to be able to manage the scope, correct? Anybody who is looking for a correct model is not to manage the clash detection process, to be honest with you. And this is the misleading concepts in industry, that people are looking at the model as the way to resolve clashes, where it is not. The model is a way where you manage your scope. If you manage your scope, you can do everything in the construction process. You name it. Anything has to do with the scope. So, and in this master program, you learn how to manage the scope, which is a very important and key aspect of the process. And then use this scope for managing changes, for managing your payment, for managing your time, for managing your resources, and so on. That's why I agree with you. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You still need to manage your scope. It doesn't matter where you are in this world. You need to manage your time. And you need to have the tools, the practical tools, or the practical workflows that enables you to control the process you are following. So I hope this answers your question.
Oh, it's me again. As someone who finds the process of education very kind of unappealing, it doesn't work for me, really, when somebody's trying to decimate their thoughts and their ideas to me. I find the best way, personally, for me learning, especially when I'm looking at something that interests me, is it's self-teaching, essentially. I go through videos, I go through online forums, I go through papers, books, whatever. It's outside of this controlled environment. And the thing with that is, especially today, we have more and more resources available to us. Those who choose to go learn that in that manner, we have more and more resources available to us, with whether it's videos on YouTube or papers available online. What are you guys doing to increase open source information for people that actually want to learn without being behind a paywall?
This is actually giving me the opportunity to introduce you something that I was thinking to speak about later. And this is the Mega Projects Master Series, actually, which is a set of master classes. They are online, they are video, and you'll receive an invitation, for example, to subscribe for free, and they are Bentley certified, actually. Do you wish maybe to introduce briefly a bit about these master classes?
Actually, the idea of having master classes is to give you some knowledge, free of charge, for our partners and our, let's say, our clients. And this will give you a feeling of to decide what is the correct education I'm looking for, what is the correct process I'm looking for. It will make you understand the depth of the knowledge that you are receiving. It will make you understand the depth and knowledge of the instructors that we are going to provide you with the education during, if you opt to take the master program. Or maybe the knowledge that you are receiving is sufficient enough for you, and that's it. So you get this free education, and it's like a good, it's building the relation between us as partners and between you as one of our clients, if not now, maybe later. At least you will be able to distribute or share with others the importance and the level of quality that we are providing for our clients. So these master programs are, master sessions are about 10-15 minutes and really interesting because they are direct to the point. They show you a lot of things related to the workflow, data management, for example, workflow, how to manage a scope, as I just explained, how a project like the Midfield Terminal building was built, how BIM was implemented there. So really, it is very rich sessions, and I encourage you to attend them, and it suits your expectations.
Just to give you a hint about them, one of them is about the Abu Dhabi International Airport project, and the BIM manager is actually sitting here, and that master class is held by Mr. Ashraf El Grabi. So he can explain you a little bit more about our open source information. Any other questions?
There's a disadvantage of open source as well. We can't trust the information, because I will give you an example. I'm doing PhD, and most of in VIBA in PhD, 90% of the questions are asked on research methodology, which we adopted, and I was too confused in the beginning to understand what does a research philosophy means. That's a technical terminology. It has three parts, like ontology, epistemology, axiology. I started same thing as others will do, searching on Google, watching videos on YouTube, and everyone is interpreting in their own terms. And there was one guy from UK. I started watching his video. What I have learned from my knowledge, he was saying something opposite. Then I said to my supervisor, I said to her that this is the video. He's saying this. Now whether I am right or he is right. One is right and one is wrong. And she said to the first question, what is the credibility of the source? Like the one who is teaching, is he doctor as well? Has he done his doctorate in this? I said, no, he hasn't specified anywhere. He said that you can't trust the source then. That's the disadvantage of open as well, open education. I will put something on Google or on my YouTube channel, which I know. But what is the credibility that is the true knowledge or right knowledge? It may mislead many.
I can't answer on behalf of all the material on the web, but I can answer you on behalf of these master classes. These master classes are given by professionals who have practiced what they are saying, and they have delivered what they are saying. So what you can do is you can question their experience, their background, because their names are mentioned and their background is mentioned. I encourage you to test that and qualify our knowledge and qualification and background. This is a safeguard for you. Before you invest any money in master education, you need to know from where you are getting this education. Of course, you can test also the knowledge and background of Zigurat. You can test the knowledge and background of Bentley. Those are the names that we are coming from. CCC is one of the biggest contractors worldwide. And you can, so it is, I do encourage you to test and check before you get information from the web, because I know that a lot of it doesn't make sense.
I think you should be doing that anyway, not just.
Well, regarding universities, one of the problems I find studying in universities, when I did my degree, you study all the theory, and then once you start your career, the first time you go on site is that I don't know anything about it. And I had a luck that I've been lucky that I could go on site before I finish my degree and kind of start my career at that point. But so many of my friends from uni, first went to like really good marks in uni, the best students ever, but then they go on site and they don't know what they're doing. That's a good thing I like about the Zigurat course, that it's more towards the industry, not towards the theory. You also have theory because you need it, but then they show you the study cases and a real project.
Well, I'm over than 32 years in construction business. Started from design, let's say, board days. There is no computers and there is no technology. So most of the question, I just simplify it in one thing. There's a big difference when you get your driving license and then when you learn during the years and you get an experience, you become attached to your vehicle. And there is a big difference when you put a GPS to guide you, where you can find proposal like the shorter, the cheapest, the fastest way, but you still have, let's say, the responsibility to drive and learn. All years, I'm still learning how to drive.
What I mean is you need like a combination. You need to apply that theory to the practice. Yeah, you will know a lot of structural design or how to calculate how the weights are, but then you go to the reality and you go to a site and it's kind of a different story, the way they approach to things. So yeah, basically it was that, like, you need to see the real cases because the books don't show you what is on site, and to learn you need to see it.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you 100%, especially from an architectural perspective. We in the architecture industry, and I speak to a lot of people, there's some exceptions, but you come out of education and then you have to start learning again. So you come out of education, you get a job, and you spend, I don't know, 3-4 years learning on the job how to actually make drawings that will go on site that can be built from, and how a building goes together. Theoretically, we should know that from while we are being educated, but we don't. And then beyond that, there's another thing that's completely lacking in the architectural education side of things is the business side. So you leave school, you spend time learning how to be an architect, but then you have to learn how to run an architecture firm, and there's nothing anywhere that teaches you that. Even in industry, the only way you learn is you decide, okay, I'm going to run my own practice, and it's a really, really difficult process. So yeah, you have to. Education needs a lot of thought.
It needs to get more involved with the practice.
Yes.
Like trying to apply the theory to real cases.
Careful. Yeah, so with that, playing with the driving analogy again, one of the really good things is obviously when you learn to drive, you learn to drive as a learner, and then once you pass, you then learn to drive as a driver. And I'm pretty sure that any of us in the room, if we went to do our driving test now, we wouldn't pass. So there are different ways of doing things. Now, the good thing that Zigurat does, which is a lot of the other classroom course and everything else, is they all expose you to the people who are creating the content. So you can look, as talking about, and say, well, this person, you can go online, I can find out they know their stuff. And, as we're talking about, there are universities out there who are respected as very good universities who haven't got a clue about any of this. There are people with multiple PhDs and masters who are even more clueless. And there are people like me with none of it who are meant to have some sort of clue. So it's very hard to judge that. Only the market will eventually do it. So I think if you're trying to do open source and you're looking at YouTube content and everything else, you've got to do what you should do with Zigurat, with all other courses, which is you look at it and you say, well, is that person someone to rely on? And you can do that with Zigurat, you can do it with other courses you buy, and you can't necessarily do that with Googling stuff. So I think it's an advantage that it gives you that exposure, and it's not just a wall of courses. It's saying this person did it, and you can click and find out what they're about.
So I totally agree with all these comments, and I'm an architect. And I'm a strange architect because I did a diploma in construction first and then studied architecture. It used to drive me nuts watching these architects trying to design things which couldn't be built, which is an odd way of doing it, right? So I spent all my summer vacations and my breaks actually on site. I've crawled through and wired reinforced bars together. I've poured concrete. I've done all that stuff on site, right? So I think everybody has that option to do that in their spare time. But what I want to do is just deflect the question a little bit, because it sort of points to people who, you know, when I was an architectural technician, they locked me up in an office and said, you're not leaving the office because you're not qualified to go on site. So I sort of ended up not really knowing what was going on site. And after a year, they let me out on a lead and then took me on site and stuff like that. So the industry is at large. When I started 35 years or whatever it was ago, a German company only worked in Germany. A UK company only worked in the UK. A US company only worked in the US. Today, all these companies are international. Foster & Partners has 47 nationalities working in an office, right? The whole point about this whole BIM infrastructural organization and this training course, I think, is to impose and introduce the concepts of sharing information across countries, across borders. Now, when you work on a project like the Midfield Terminal building, what percentage of the people who are working on that project ever saw the project? Any ideas? On your team, yeah, but the engineers, the architects, the structural engineers, they've probably never even seen the project. Exactly. That's the point. The point is you have to learn to work with these teams remotely. So, you know, I don't know what you do on social competencies, communication competencies, because there's language, there's body language, there's the way you write emails. That all plays a major role in today's engineering world. You know, the Crossrail project has 29 sites across London. They had to make a decision, centralize everything in one location, or let them do their job and then connect them through a platform. And they decided to go through the platform. They could all see what was going on. They could all share each other's work, but they could just get on with doing what they needed to do. So I think that's really the heart of this type of education.
So social skills are not that soft anymore.
Okay, I just want to add a comment about what you just expressed about theory and going to site and facing the challenges. I will take a real example from the Midfield Terminal building, which was the architecture, the roof. The roof is a beautiful design, and a fantastic architect thought of simulating the sand dunes, as my colleague Ashraf is an architect, who talks about this beautiful design in a better way than me. But look at the consequences of having such a beautiful design that is not really studied thoroughly until the construction phase. And we'll tell you from practice what happened. Let's give you one problem. I'm not going to show all the problems, only one single problem. You know, to draw something like this, it might need just a nice pen and a clever architect, and he does something beautiful. Correct, Ashraf? And he does it. And everybody likes it. And it goes to construction, and we tender for it. Now, when we go to real world and we start building this, we went to the fabricator. Simple process. You cannot go for construction until you does fabrication. When the fabricator realized that there is about 42,000 banners, beautiful. He has a factory. He can send it to the machine and he can cut it. Can you imagine there is no single bundle similar to the other? So you have 42,000 different sizes of bundles that he has to cut. Before he has to cut, he needs to engineer it. So it means that he needs to draw it. He needs somehow to give dimensions. He calculated the amount of hours required to do this. It will be 20 people for 2 years. Just to do for one aspect only. Of course, we had to step in and help, and we have done it. We finished it in 8 weeks using automation and techniques and BIM that we have. But the thing is that if we did not find a solution for him, he would never be able to finish the thing on site. And of course, a second thing, the cost of having this kind of different sizes is 4 times than having a standard size. Not even if the architect thought of the constructability of what he is designing, of the costs or the consequences of his nice, I would say, reasonable ideas, he would have thought twice before. Maybe he would have thought of how am I going to reduce the number from 42,000 maybe to 100. So this is a real, the cost of this, because of the geometrical difference, was 5 times more than the original cost. So time was extreme, complexity was extreme, and effort was extreme. And without having such a technology, really, we would never finish that. And if we will not have this technology and stepped in to help the poor manufacturer, he would never have knew what he has to do. So this is what I want to say. When you come to practical aspect, it is different when you get it from practitioners, different than doing it in the office in a closed place.
Well, I think it's time. This is coming to an end. I guess that this will be the closing words, and I would like to thank everyone, and I wouldn't like to miss anyone. So let me see. First of all, thank you very much, Dayam, Papic, and also the entire Bentley Systems UK offices for your help to set up the event, for the opportunity to be here, and also to learn the way you are disrupting the sector and the way you are trying to doing technology agnostic awareness work. Thank you very much to our partners, the CCC team that is here. Thank you to the entire Zigurat team that made it possible, to those at home that chose watching us instead of joining us here. But thank you very much to each of you sitting there for all the questions you raised. Please make sure you still raise more questions after this. Thank you.